you're watching this on EG's channel and you are not sure who I am, well, basically I'm Swim. I'm the card game guy for Evil Geniuses. I've played basically every card game that has ever existed. My biggest passion out of those probably being poker, which has been kind of like a big background for me, especially in the last several years, but I've played Magic, Hearthstone, Gwent being, one of the big ones, started my streaming there. And here we're going to be breaking down Legends of Runeterra, which is actually a really fantastic game. So yeah, let's get right into it. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down one particular game in that series, as well as a different game with a different deck in this following month as well. Let's talk about the deck in question, why we chose the deck. It ended up being, and I will say this right now, this tournament was won from lineup construction alone. Card games are all about developing a strategy that's stronger than your opponents, and I don't actually even necessarily think I played the single cleanest games in the entire tournament, probably second or third, but I had by far the strongest lineup construction on my side, and as soon as the tournament started, I was a huge favorite with these decks. Now, I'm gonna basically talk mostly on like a fairly intro level. I'm gonna try to explain things as like thoroughly as possible while still making things easy to understand. But the biggest thing about this deck, this is a very weird version of Ezreal Karma because it's been geared entirely towards beating aggro. This is engineering a tournament strategy that we use in card games called targeting. So we're going to be casting a lot of spells to survive while leveling our Ezreal. When we target 8 enemies with different effects, our Ezreal will level wherever he is, and this will basically start a chain reaction that will end the game by just like dealing so much damage to the Nexus that they can't live anymore. To stay alive, the spells themselves are picked to kill opponents' units or slow them down, and we run several units like Eye of the Dragon, Claw of the Dragon, as well as Chump Womp that are going to, in the case of the first two, trigger off of spells and get like good ways of staying alive. In the case of Chump Womp, just being a solid unit, Mushroom Clouds are great for discarding as well as killing the opponent at the end with Ezreal. Now we are running one Vi in this list, and the reason for that is just to be a kind of like mid-range beef option, because Double Drawn Karma is not what you want, particularly in that aggro matchup we are working so hard to counter. Lastly, we're running one copy of Yone Wind Chaser. At this point in time, a lot of people are running more and more Yone, but at the time of the tournament, everyone was cutting this card, which is completely insane to me because this card has been good this entire time. Okay, and now that you know kind of how the basics of the deck play out, we're going to go ahead and get into the game in question. This is going to be the one where we played against BBG's Demacia list. BBG, of course, one of the better players in the game. And we are going to be playing this version of Ezreal Karma that we were talking about. You'll also have the lovely opportunity to see my past self down below if you want to see my reactions at the day of the event. This is myself playing in this tournament. Okay, so we get into the first game. This is BBG's Demacia deck. Now, Demacia mid-range is something that he's known for. Basically, they play very fair, very much value-oriented, very middling in every regard. The biggest weakness of the deck is they can't really kill you without going to combat, so you can let your health go low without risking anything at all. We've got our Mulligan, which is a very, very interesting choice. We're going to go ahead and just Mulligan away the Will of Ionia, because Claws of the Dragon is a good early stabilization card you kind of want to keep in general, and in this matchup in particular, Ezreal will suffice as an early game stabilizer. So things are going to get started pretty quickly. The biggest thing about Demacia is you need to keep their units low. You just want to keep killing their units because they have a lot of cards that buff their entire board. So if you keep their unit count low, they're going to struggle to do much of anything. Here, you'll see we just made our first like big decision of the game. It looks really minor, but let's go ahead and talk about this. And this decision is the pass, right? The pass is really, really big because basically we are risking that the opponent will lock us out of an action. Because in Runeterra, when both players pass one after another, it means we go to the next turn and, mana's burnt and people just are locked out of actions for that turn, right? So the thing you'll have to do when you play very reactive decks like PNZ decks or Shadow Isles decks is you really want to be taking a lot of really, really early passes. The reason for that is because when you have the first action, you are at a bit of a disadvantage. You want to force the opponent to go first so that you can respond to what they do, right? When you look at this board state, I could do a few things. I could play Eye of the Dragon into Thermal Beam, And because Eye of the Dragon has a tune, so I would have exactly enough mana to Eye of the Dragon and then Thermo Beam the Cytheria of Cloudfield. But the most important thing that I'll do in this matchup is you'll see me just take passes like this. I just want him to play his card first so that I can decide, ooh, maybe I should do a different play, or maybe there's a play better than that. Time is on my side here, right? And this is one of the most like universal concepts of strategy, whether you're playing card games or MOBAs or FPS games, just always identify whose side time is on. Time is on my side. He's the one who has to play first. Okay, so he plays the Fleet Feather Tracker, and now we can play our Eye of the Dragon, and now we can Thermo Beam, and we can even take the same Thermo Beam we were going to take before if we want to, but we can deal with small threats with cards like Gotcha, with cards like Ezreal's Mystic Shot. Okay, so we're going to try to make sure Thermo Beam stays flexible because we don't have a suitable replacement in our hand. Opponent's going to Zed on 3, and as always, we're just going to go ahead and slam it with a Gotcha. So we're -1 mana, but in this case, perfectly fine. We can even curve out with our Eye of the Dragon spell if we want to here. Now, he's going to go ahead and pass. He has no attack, and we have the opportunity to Thermo Beam the Fleet Feather Tracker if we want to. Now, there's one big thing I haven't mentioned in this matchup, and that's a specific card, Ranger's Resolve, which is the 1 mana card in Demacia, a spell that can be played at any time, burst speed, and it just gives his entire board +1 armor, toughness, which means that they take 1 less damage from anything. And that's really scary because I do a lot of damage with my spells. So I need to make sure I do not let him get a game-winning Ranger's Resolve, and I need to make sure that I am either overkilling his units or waiting until he's out of mana, right? Okay, so we go to round 4. Now, we've got this sort of predicament again. Again, I'm in this situation where I could play first. I could see what exactly I want to be doing, or I could pass, let him play into me. And the question is, you know, is there a downside to passing? And again, the answer is pretty much no. I should pretty much just play my option first. So now there's a couple of things we can do. We can play our Ezreal and start getting these Mystic Shots. So I mentioned Ezreal's sort of like an early stabilizer in this matchup. Normally, Ezreal's a finisher. Normally you want to mulligan away Ezreal early, but because Demacia is so board reliant, you just want sources for Mystic Shots early. So in this matchup, Ezreal represents a nice Mystic Shot generated because every time he strikes the Nexus, you get a free Mystic Shot in your hand. So I open my turn with passing. This is a bit risky, but again, he can't afford to pass back and lock us out of the action. It would benefit me too much. And we see what he plays first. Now that we know what he's played, we can go ahead and get our attack in with the elusive Ezreal. It can't get blocked because it's elusive, and this gives us the free fleeting Mystic Shot in our hand. Now we're going to go ahead and kill the Fleet Feather Tracker with it. Why the Tracker? Well, there's 2 reasons. First of all, its Challenger makes it a bit scarier than the Cytheria of Cloudfield, but also, again, we're playing around Ranger's Resolve, that really scary card that gives tough to everything. Even in a case like that, I do not want to let Ranger's Resolve get any value at all. I mean, maybe he's on a hand that has like 2 Ranger's Resolve, and I'm just letting him use one of them for any value at all by even trying to target something for exact lethal. Opponent plays Garen on turn 5, and this is his scare card. This is sort of like BBG's signature card. This is like his Dark Magician. He loves this card. Now, this is the 5 mana 5/5 regen champion, and when it strikes twice, it levels up. And when it levels up, you can attack every turn instead of every other turn, which is pretty scary. It also has regen, which means if you don't kill it, it will regenerate back to full health every turn, which is also pretty scary. We saved this Thermo Beam because we didn't really have another way of dealing with Garen, and we have 5 mana, so we could go for it. But again, it's a bit risky because he really might have the Ranger's Resolve. So unfortunately, I can't take that risk here. But fortunately, again, Demacia's biggest weakness is they just play for the board. They fight too fair, right? Anything that doesn't play for the board, like they don't have a way to kill you without just going through a normal board combat. As long as we have blockers, even if our health gets low, we will never die. And our Eye of the Dragons can always recover more health, right? So you look at this board and it looks pretty terrifying, right? He's got a lot of like just big stats and our stats are very weak. But we have Eye of the Dragon. That's going to be a really nice suitable blocker. We have the ability to just kind of like, you know, chill, tank things, not worry too much about anything. So yeah, we're totally fine just letting this play out the way it is. we can go ahead and block the War Chefs. It goes down to 2 health here, just basically saving a little bit of free health. I don't want my units to die. Now, this is where we get to the good stuff. We're down to 10 health. He's got a scary board, a really intimidating board. What are we gonna do here? Now, we've got 4 mana total, right? So if we save our mana, we're potentially burning 1 mana, right? Which is not really good. You don't really want to be burning mana. In this case, we're going to go ahead and Mystic Shot the War Chefs, because even though it's again, it does play a bit into Ranger's Resolve, it's just one instance on something post-combat. The scariest thing about Ranger's Resolve is that when you use it as a card, it gives toughness for the rest of the turn, which means as long as I let him use Resolve after his combat, the tough won't matter as much because the rest of the turn isn't as long. Now, he'll chain to this Mystic Shot. He chains Relentless Pursuit, and he swings back again. So this is quite interesting because he's threatening another 8 damage to our face. It's turn 5 and we're threatening to go down to 2 life, and he's attacking with a 3/3 and a 5/5. Now, we are going to be potentially getting the, lifesteal dragons if we want to Thermo Beam. It would be a slightly awkward Thermo Beam to do, but we'd still be able to get some value out of it. The question is here, what do we do? Well, we can block the Garen. The Garen's also leveling up as well, which means he's going to start getting the attack every single turn. We have a bunch of weak units on board, and we're staring down potentially going down to 2 health. It's so early in the game to be down this much health, especially against the leveled Garen. Super, super, super scary. So what we're going to do here is actually fairly plain, and this is something that I think any high-level player would do in this position, and that's, we're going to do nothing. We're going to let ourselves get down to 2 health. We're going to let this Garen level up, and we're going to be completely okay with that. The reason why that is because, again, Demacia has no way of dealing 2 damage without getting through our board, and we go to next turn, summon 2 of these lifesteal dragons, and suddenly he has no way of getting through our board. Now, at this point in time, the Twitch Rivals Twitch chat is all saying like, GG, it's over, BBG has won this, that kind of thing. What if I were to tell you that this game is actually already over and not in BBG's favor? So the biggest thing about this position is it looks really scary. We're at 2 health, he's at 19, and he has a leveled Garen on the board. So he's gonna be attacking every single turn. Here's the problem. We own the board. We have an infinite supply of these lifesteal dragons that are going to be blocking infinitely, not letting him get damage through. And again, Demacia's biggest weakness as a region is they can't kill you without going through you. We have ownership of the board. We will be able to chump block every turn, and it's no problem surviving for a few turns until our Ezreal's leveled up. We go into turn 6. We've got some free attacks here. We can attack with Ezreal. We can attack with the Salamanders. Now, the downside of this is he's also potentially attacking this turn, right? He is the one with the Garen. He gets free attacks. But we know that if he wants to, if we don't attack with the lifesteal dragons, he will skip his attack. And he can't stop letting me lifesteal anyway. So basically, I'm just getting a little bit of life back. Look at that. Dealing a little bit of extra damage to his face, and now I can just block the Garen out, right? He'll regen, but it doesn't matter. Because in Legends of Runeterra, stats start falling off. Like, just the raw beef that units have is really, really, really scary in the early game, but it's right around this turn that they start falling off, and for exactly this reason. Now, what are we gonna do here? Well, this one's interesting. We've got a few spells in hand, right? Garen has taken 3 damage this turn because of our 3 blocker. It's a 6/3, so we just need to deal 3 damage to kill it. We've got a Mystic Shot and a Static Shock. Our Static Shock has the ability to deal 1 damage to 2 different units. So we can static both units and Mystic Shot the Garen and save our Thermo Beam, and we can just kill everything on this board, even flipping our Ezreal. We can't do that because of Ranger's Resolve. Again, really, really important. We need to be playing around it. It looks like the play, but we're going to be damage inefficient here. We're going to send 2 damage into the Cytheria of Cloudfield. is super, super important the way we're sequencing this. We're sending 2 damage into the Cytheria of Cloudfield, and then we're going to go ahead and thermo the Garen for 4. We're making it so that if he uses Ranger's Resolve at any point, he will not be able to save anything. His units will just die no matter what, because toughness can't save units if I'm overkilling them. He's just going to go ahead. I almost called BBG Garen. BBG is going to go ahead and play Fleet for the Tracker into his second Garen in his hand. No problem there. We played our 2 spells. So we're going to go ahead and get our Dragon Links back again. And you see exactly, this is what I was talking about, the predicament that BBG is in. He can't get through to our life total. He can't hit our Nexus, right? His deck doesn't really have great answers to this kind of board state. And not only that, but we're even healing a little bit every turn. Not that we need to, but just kind of like icing on the cake, our Dragonlings are getting us a little bit of life back every turn. So nothing in that regard, like we can even start letting some of these hits through again. But in Legends of Runeterra, a really key thing is to use your health as a resource, right? Let yourself get damaged if it means taking control of the board, but keep your health outside of the danger range. And different decks have different danger ranges, but DEMACIA'S danger range, they have no danger range. They can't even deal, this deck in particular, this deck I'm against, they can't even deal 1 damage except by hitting you through combat, right? So we can let our health get to 1. And we do that, and that ultimately is what wins us the game. So now, we'll go ahead and attack with our Ezreal. We'll static. In this case, our Ezreal needs to level up. We're 6 out of 8, so we're just staticking to level up the Ezreal. BBG is going to Ranger's Resolve. He had it this entire time, and he finally used the Ranger's Resolve, and it's not going to matter. Because at this point in time, I'm only using the Static Shock to level the Ezreal. Killing his units doesn't even matter anymore. There's only, I mean, this game is basically ending. Ezreal's going to get the Nexus Strike, generating the Mystic Shot in hands. That's going to be 4 damage to the face here. And now we just have to sequence in a way to make sure that we're not giving too much value to a card like Single Combat, right? They're going to go ahead and get their scout attacks in. Every time we cast a spell, Ezreal will send 2 damage to the Nexus. We have a hand of 5 spells in it, all of which are extremely cheap, 2 of which deal damage to the Nexus on their own. So we have a really easy ability here to just make sure we are ending the game with our spells in hand. We're just going to cast 1 at a time just to make sure we're not feeding value to Single Combat. If we play all the Mystic Shots at once, his Single Combat will be able to stop a bunch of their effects from going off. But in this case, we're just going to end it with Ezreal's ability after playing 2 mushrooms. And that's it. That's the game. So this has been a kind of like a breakdown of how to play Karma Ezreal at a high level. And I think like in showing this game, there's actually a lot we did that probably not a lot of players would have done. It was taking those like open passes. In that particular game, it didn't end up mattering that much, but I can promise you that's the number one thing. In some games, those open passes to gain reactivity, to be able to react to what your opponent does on that turn instead of letting them react to you is so key. It's insanely powerful, right? Playing around Ranger's Resolve the entire game until it no longer mattered was absolutely key, and we absolutely would have lost the game if we didn't do that. And most importantly, letting ourselves take that damage in the early game, letting the damage happen, letting the Garen flip was really essential because we need to make sure we can't be throwing away our units, right? We can't be throwing away cards like Eye of the Dragon when they're the ones that are generating us things that are going to get us back in the game, or Ezreal, right? Our units are important. Our life is not important because I mean, we can use those units to just block for life later if we need to, right? So just identifying that in that matchup, we could keep our life total low and really not have it matter at all was really, really key. All right, guys. Well, hopefully you were able to learn something from that tournament breakdown. And again, we'll be doing another second match. I have one picked out with a different deck in the same tournament that's going to be coming later this month, which is something I'm very excited for. But yeah, we're going to be doing a bunch of new styles of content pieces here on EG's YouTube as well. And that's going to be something that's I'm actually really looking forward to. We're going to do some on like deck building and some that you'll just have to kind of like wait and find out for. But I'm excited for it. Let me know if you guys have any ideas for things that you'd kind of like to see of me. And yeah, that's going to be it. So I'll see you guys next time.